Hi everybody, Mr. Molina here. I'm putting together this video, friends, to supplement your understanding of utilitarianism. Okay, I I'm fully aware that you're not gonna get a very detailed, comprehensive understanding of utilitarianism by simply doing the reading assignment, right? Reading hedonism, and so I'm also supplying a PowerPoint covering the main ideas in utilitarianism, and yet I was not fully satisfied with these two things. So that's why I'm putting together this video. This video, therefore, is supplemental, but it's not optional. Okay, and by that I mean simply the information in this video will be on your quiz. So be aware of that. Okay, I'm not going to cover the whole PowerPoint. I'm simply going to touch upon some very important aspects of utilitarianism. So here we go. Consequentialism. This is our first term, and consequentialism is it's an umbrella term. Let me put the description here. Moral theories that do not consider an action moral or immoral, based on reason, nature, or any traditional conception of virtue, but instead are based on the actual benefits that people will be able to reap from acting morally. Those theories are called consequentialists. You can also see that as an outlook, a moral outlook. If you're the kind of person who thinks that the right thing to do, morally speaking, is one that depends on a particular outcome, okay, then that's a consequentialist way of thinking, right? Whatever it's right or wrong is based on the consequences or benefits, okay? So what are those benefits for utilitarianism? This is the axiological question. We talked about axiology briefly in the previous video, the virtue ethics video. As you might remember, axiology is value theory. It's concerned with what's most valuable, right, in morality. So if you think about it, if morality is about consequences, right, outcomes, okay, then there must be something valuable, important about those outcomes. So we need to identify then what those outcomes are, what those benefits are. And depending on the answer we give, is the kind of theory that we're going to develop. So, having said that, there are many theories under the umbrella of consequentialism. The one we're studying this week, utilitarianism, happens to be a consequentialist theory. It's one theory within this framework or umbrella we call consequentialism. I hope that's clear. So, but the answer, the axiological answer, it's going to give us a more clear picture of what are the fundamentals of utilitarianism. So, what are the benefits according to utilitarianism? Or yeah, what are those benefits? What is the outcome that we desire? What does John Stuart Mill say in this respect in hedonism? Let's find out. All right, so this is John Stuart Mill. He calls his moral theory utilitarianism because it is based on utility or the greatest happiness principle. Okay, so what is the desired outcome in utilitarianism? Happiness. Okay, that's similar to virtue ethics, if you remember. Aristotle pretty much gave the same answer. Why should I be concerned with morality? Why is morality important? Why it matters to do the right thing and to be a good person? Aristotle would say, well, happiness has to do with happiness. Don't you want to be happy? Well, virtue, the moral path, is the path to happiness. You're only going to be happy if you become a good moral person. Now, for John Stuart Mill, though, he has a different conception of happiness. And it's very simply following his utility or greatest happiness principle. Happiness is pretty much defined as a life plentiful of pleasure and with very little pain. Okay? So that's that's the benefit, right, of acting morally, according to John Stuart Mill. Joy, pleasure. Therefore, whatever thing you do, whatever action that maximizes pleasure or minimizes pain is the right action, the right thing to do. So keep in mind that we're not only considering pleasure and pain here, but also numbers of people. This is very, very important to fully understand utilitarianism. So the benefits, okay, happiness, okay, that's what I'm pursuing. That's the answer to the axiological question. What's the value of this theory? What's the most important in life? Okay, happiness. Okay, what do you mean by happiness, John Stuart Mill? Well, by happiness I mean a life full of pleasures with very little or no pain. I mean, think about it. That might make perfect sense for you, right? Try to conceptualize the perfect life, the most beautiful, amazing life. Isn't that a life full of pleasures and joys and with very little pain or no pain? So, to his credit, John Stuart Mill is not vague in his answer of happiness. What is happiness exactly? That's what it is. A lot of pleasure, very little or no pain. And when it comes to morality, that would be the right action. The right moral action is one that maximizes pleasure and minimizes pain. So if, let's say, if your action makes most people happy, that is the right thing to do. If your action makes most people unhappy, that is the wrong thing to do. So this is a consequentialist way of thinking because we're not relying on right reason in agreement with nature, or we're not relying on some other traditional conception of virtue. So what's important, morally speaking, for utilitarianism is, once again, the outcome. What is the outcome? Based on the outcome of your action will determine whether your action was right or wrong. Okay? And yet we don't have to wait till we act or we have acted. We can anticipate, right? And it's kind of easy to anticipate what kind of actions are going to produce more joy, more happiness, and minimize pain. So think about, for example, pain. Okay, there is a COVID. Okay, there you go, COVID. When COVID happened, people were struggling, right? And everybody was freaking out. Uh, I remember we did not know what we were dealing with, and so people were really, really scared. Okay, so coming up with a vaccine, and medicine, an antidote to COVID was definitely the right moral thing to do. I mean, after all, what this potential medicine or vaccine would do is to minimize the pain, right? Once you get the disease, get the virus, well, you can just get the shot or get the shot first, and then you won't have to worry about dealing with very severe effects of the virus. So you know what I'm saying. If coming up with a solution to a big problem, okay, that's going to minimize pain, that will be the right thing to do. Or if what you do happens to produce a lot of pleasure, a lot of joy, that'll be the right thing to do. So in the end, it's all about pleasure, pain, and numbers, friends. Now, very early, philosophers realized that, okay, this sounds very good. It sounds like makes perfect sense. But there's some issues. Like, for example, we have to speculate regarding the outcomes of our actions because we cannot know for sure, right? 100% sure, probably. Some actions require a closer analysis and take into account different factors at play. What do I mean by that? I mean this. Let's say you're going to donate money to some organization, okay, charity. Let's say Salvation Army, okay, you have some money you want to donate, let's say $1,000. And you're thinking, okay, this is the right thing to do. With the $1,000, I'll be able to help a lot of people. Will you? What if the money you're donating is not used wisely, right? What if it's just people who are, or somebody who's corrupt in the organization just takes the money and pocket it, or what if they use this money to very, very unwisely. They spend it on stuff that has no purpose and meet no need. That happens a lot, right? Like paying administrators or some sort of thing like that. So you're thinking that by donating $1,000, you're actually going to make a difference in someone's life, and maybe, probably you won't, right? So how do you know? How do you know for sure? For some actions, it's kind of easy to tell that your action will maximize uh, happiness. And an example of that might be bringing pizza to your coworkers. I mean, surprise your coworkers or your classmates with pizza or with donuts one day, right? Go to class and bring, big box of donuts and offer donuts to people. I am sure, right, and that people will be very happy with your action. Okay, so according to utilitarianism, that will be the right thing to do. That it's morally correct to do because you are making most people happy with your action, with your generosity. Okay, so there you go. That's easy to tell. Okay, I know sometimes it's easy to know if my action will maximize happiness or pleasure. But sometimes it's not that easy, like in the case of donating money to charity. So, and there are many, many other instances where uh, this can go, your analysis can go wrong. So, for example, okay, here's a controversial example. And I think I used it in the PowerPoint. Me as a teacher, I agree with my students. Bring me $50, okay, a piece, and I will give everybody an A. But I need a majority. Imagine I'm presenting this deal to my students in class. I have 25 students. And I said, okay, I need a majority to make it right, to make it morally right according to utilitarianism. So I've actually done this, experiment in my classes. And I ask my students, okay, raise your hand if you'll be happy with this deal. You won't have to come to class anymore. You won't have to spend money on gas and then probably lunch. And you won't have to worry about reading anything and making the assignments and then taking the quizzes. None of that. Just bring me $50. I'll give you an A, guarantee. But I need a majority. If I have a majority of students on board with the deal, then according to utilitarianism, that will be the right moral thing to do. Why? Because my action is making most people happy, and I'll be super happy with the deal, of course. Okay, so that particular action, it's utilitarian, but then somebody might object to the action going like, wait, wait, wait. If other teachers at CPCC, they follow your example and they do similar deals with their students, uh, that's going to completely kill the purpose of the institution, which is to educate students, right? Educate us. No one will really learn anything. Yeah, everybody will get A's and stuff, but we're not really educating anybody. So in the end, this is going to end up corrupting society, and the institution is just going to go down, right? Because people will say, oh, okay, that's a terrible institution, CPCC, teachers do this and nobody will go to the institution. And somebody can anticipate all these potential problems, and in the end, that's not going to maximize happiness, but the opposite. But here's the issue. How do we know? How do we know for a fact? Because we're only speculating. How do I 100% I can be 100% sure that my action will in the end maximize happiness, pleasure, and not maximize pain? There's so many factors at play, and there's speculation, and philosophers don't like that. So what's the answer? Okay, philosophers utilitarian philosophers came up with a solution to this problem. So let's talk about it on the next slide. Okay, so here's the solution. Utilitarian philosophers decided, okay, there's a way out of this problem. Let's have two versions of utilitarianism. Okay, let's call the first version rule utilitarianism. That is the idea that a right action is one that conforms to a particular rule that, if followed adequately, would bring for most people the most beneficial balance of pleasure over suffering. Okay? Meaning what? Meaning simply, think about actions that we know make people happy. Okay, we know for a fact. Like, we don't have to speculate too much. Or we know we can't go wrong. Let's think about actions like these, and let's turn them into norms or rules, and then we follow those rules. We'll be fine. Things like, okay, surprising your classmates or coworker with free donuts or pizza. Okay, you know that makes people happy. Okay, so let's put it on the list, right? Let's imagine we're listing all the actions that we know make people happy. Complimenting people, we know that makes most people happy. Some people don't like compliments, but that's a minority. Most people do. Complimenting people, giving nice presents to people. That's redundant. Maybe that's the donuts and pizza. Okay. Holding the door for people. Okay. That makes some people happy. And let's think about more things. I'm trying to think of other things that make people happy. But anyways, think about actions that you know make people happy, and actions that you know you can't go wrong. Getting some presents, food, complimenting people, that sort of thing. So let's make a list of those actions, and we turn them into norms or rules, and we follow those, and we'll be fine. Whatever that it's not there in that list, or that it's questionable, then we're going to absolutely not follow. Okay, that's rule utilitarianism. Okay, see it as like commandments, utilitarian commandments. Um, okay, what is the alternative? The alternative is act utilitarianism. Holds that the rightness of actions depend solely on the overall pleasure benefits produced by individual actions. Meaning this. For people who are act utilitarians, it's okay to follow rule utilitarianism. It's okay to uh, comply to those actions that you know make people happy. Giving people presents, and buying surprising coworkers with donuts and that sort of. Okay, you can do those things, and holding the door for people, complimenting people. You can do those things, but that's not what utilitarianism is all about. I'm talking like an act utilitarian. There are particular actions, individual actions, that can also maximize pleasure, happiness, and minimize pain, that are not necessarily actions that most people would agree to. Okay, that's weird. Okay, so in other words, the deal, asking my students to bring me $50 for an A, that it's appropriate to do according to act utilitarianism. It's appropriate. I will be justified in doing that deal with my students according to act utilitarianism, not according to rule utilitarianism. Because you see, friends, rule utilitarianism basically deals with conventional morality. Okay, that's a great way of putting it. Remember that for your quiz. Rule utilitarianism is basically about conventional morality, things that we know, most of us know, make people happy. Okay. And there's no controversy or anything like that. But that's not the way most utilitarian thinkers want to go. And I think to me, this is mind-blowing. Most people who consider themselves utilitarian thinkers, they are act utilitarians. philosophers, intellectuals. There's some people out there who are openly utilitarian, and they are act utilitarian, not rule utilitarian. In other words, these are people for whom actions or some actions, despite being very controversial, can still be right to do, right to follow. Okay. Can you anticipate some big issues with this idea, friends? Okay, because I can. And we're going to talk about them on the next slide. Actually, I want to start listing the problems of utilitarianism. And I'm going to tell you why. This is very important to address. You know, in the past, friends, my students, or some of my students, they said to me, Mr. Molina, you're not being fair with utilitarianism. Because every time you talk about utilitarianism and you present any idea of utilitarianism, it's always negative. And I remember saying, well, to me, it's difficult for me not to see the problems. When you tell me, you give me an idea about something, it's just very difficult for me to not concentrate on the negatives first. So, but we'll talk about the positives at the end. But at this point, I don't know how many of you can see, wow, this idea of act utilitarianism can go really, really wrong. If that's you, well, um, let's see what the problems, okay, of utilitarianism. All right, here we go. First problem, we just addressed this, okay? Considering the number of variables in each moral scenario, sometimes it can be very difficult to properly assess, anticipate the outcomes of our actions so as to determine whether they'll turn out to be utilitarian or not. So the way utilitarian thinkers solve this problem is with the distinction, right? Rule and act utilitarianism. You can't go wrong with rule utilitarianism, conventional morality. Act utilitarianism is a bit more controversial, and yet most people are act utilitarians, so I said that already. Second problem, a pleasure-based theory of morality, it's morally questionable as it can prioritize pleasure over truth. For example, according to utilitarianism, act utilitarianism, it would be morally appropriate to hide painful truth knowing its disclosure would make people upset. Okay, so truth does not matter a whole lot according to utilitarianism. Because if I have an information that I know, if I disclose it, I'm going to make a lot of people upset, then according to utilitarianism, the right thing for me to do is to keep this information to myself, even if it concerns you. The right thing is to keep it to myself. The wrong thing to do would be to let you know about the information. So even lying can be justified according to utilitarianism. Like, I have the information with me, here's the information, but I'm not going to disclose it because I know it's going to bring a lot of pain. It concerns you, but I'm not going to disclose it. As a matter of fact, if somebody asks me if I have some information, I'm going to say, no, I don't have anything. I'll be lying, but it doesn't matter. I'm lying to avoid a major drama. So you see what I'm saying? Rule utilitarianism will never allow for that kind of rule. You should lie to help people. No. You don't lie. That line is wrong. But according to act utilitarianism, you can lie if your lie is going to produce a nice outcome. If it's going to minimize pain or maximize pleasure, happiness. Oh, interesting. Um, Friends, true story. With my ex-wife's family, my ex-wife and I, we discovered this family member, woman, who she was being unfaithful to her husband. Okay, So we caught her, my ex-wife and I. And now my wife's family, they're very, there's a big family and they're very close, very, very close. So you can imagine Thanksgiving, Christmases, I mean, they're great parties and it's a lot of fun. And I'm telling you, these people really, really care about each other. But okay, we found out this person, this woman was being unfaithful to her husband of 20 years. And I said to my ex-wife, what should we do? And she was like, we're going to keep our mouths shut because you know if you open your mouth, you're going to bring a lot of pain to the family. She said something like that, actually, without knowing about utilitarianism. She was using the same language. And so, okay, so the right thing for me to do was to keep my mouth shut. But this was the problem. The man, her husband, was a really, really good friend of mine, really sweet guy. So it was difficult for me to keep a straight face with this man on family meetings, knowing what I knew that he was being cheated on. That was very, very hard. It's inside of me. I felt terrible. I did not feel I was doing the right thing. So I'm going to ask you, if you're being cheated on, won't you like somebody, a friend, telling you about it, opening your eyes, right? Even though it's going to be painful and all, wouldn't you rather know? This is what John Stuart Mill means by we rather be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. We rather be an unhappy intellectual than a happy fool. Yeah, we rather know the truth. So okay. So, but again, the right thing to do is to keep our mouth shut in this particular situation. So, okay, so that's a problem. Let's go to problem number 3. Utilitarianism's rejection of moral absolutes. Utilitarianism rejects the idea of moral absolutes. Might make it morally appropriate to take an innocent human life if the act helps a majority in some practical way. Oh, okay. So, okay, I posted the trolley dilemma to exemplify, right, how, according to utilitarianism, if it's in your hands to either kill one person or five, the right thing, according to utilitarianism, is to kill one, right? So, because five, it's better than one. Now, to give you a more realistic scenario, once again, utilitarianism is fine with the idea of taking someone's life, even if it's an innocent person, to save a majority. They're fine with that idea. Utilitarianism is utilitarian thinkers. But this is a more probably realistic scenario. You know, with the appropriate legislation, will be available, will be actually be capable of, let's say, taking someone in prison, let's say somebody who's doing life in prison, like a terrible criminal, somebody who killed, let's say, dozens of people. Okay, terrible criminal, proven criminal. He's doing life in prison. Okay. Uh, how about the idea of taking this prisoner, kill him, and use his organs to save people waiting for an organ donation and actually save lives by killing this criminal? And with the appropriate legislation, we can make it happen, make it legal. When I present this issue to my students in class, it's funny how most of them, by far, the majority, they don't like the idea. They're like, well, yeah, the criminal is a terrible person, and that might be a way of making up for his crimes, but still not right. Uh, if the criminal consents, okay, that's a totally different thing. But we're not talking about consent here. That is natural law. That is not utilitarianism. Utilitarianism does not care about your consent. We can take your life to save a majority, and that will be right, morally speaking. So how about that idea? Just tell me about it. Maybe you have your own thoughts on this issue. Let me know through the weekly forum. But Gosh, quite something, don't you think? Um, yeah, we can take one of these people who are just no benefit to society. They're doing life in prison. They're using taxpayers' money to just living and vegetating till the day they die and not contributing anything positive to society. We can use their organs, kill them, right? First thing, use their organs and actually help good people. Sure, why not? That sounds that sounds right. Hmm. What do you think? Do you agree? Maybe you guys agree with the idea. Let's go to the next problem. As Robert Nozick's thought experiment, The Experience Machine, shows, most people believe that pleasure is not the most valuable thing in morality and life, but life itself, no matter how painful or difficult life may be. After all, when asked whether it would be desirable to live the rest of one's life connected to an experience machine, most people say no. I've done this, let's say, experiment in my classes. I've asked my students, how many of you imagine we had the technology? The technology is available. We have a machine. You can program it so you can be put to sleep and have any dream in your mind, any experience that you desire. You can program the machine so you can be the the the, the richest man or the richest person in the world. Okay, that's going to be you, in your mind, in your dreams. So you program the machine. You want to be like the next somebody like a super sports star like Michael Jordan. Okay, you want to be somebody like him. You program the machine. You connect to the machine. You're put to sleep, and then you have the experience in your head. You know, I ask my students, imagine we had this technology now available. You can be anybody you want to be. Wouldn't you be willing to connect to this experience machine for the rest of your life? Right? I mean, after all, you're going to have an amazing life here. It will feel real. It won't feel like you're in a dream. It will feel real. Think about the Matrix movie. That's a good example, right? A good movie to compare this thought experiment with the Matrix. So yeah, you're gonna be living in this virtual reality for the rest of your life till you die, but it'll be an amazing virtual reality. Well, most people say no, no, I don't want to do that. I rather live my life, even if it's not the best life, even if I'm struggling. I had a student telling me the other day. This is funny. This student said, I actually enjoy my struggles because when I'm struggling, I feel like what I'm pursuing it's worth pursuing. It adds value to my life. I'm like, oh, that's deep. And I said that is so interesting because you're pretty much you're pretty much killing, destroying the premises, the main premise of this philosophy, utilitarianism. The premise being pain is bad and pleasure is good. And that's what happiness should be all about. A lot of pleasure, little or no pain. You're pretty much destroying this premise and therefore the whole theory with your observation. And other people say things like, well, and pain is gain, right? That's something that people say, right? Pain is gain. Okay, if you're exercising because you want to have a good figure, whatever, you want to be healthier. Okay, the process is painful, but you're pursuing something that it's meaningful to you, right? Okay, so that means that pain is good. Okay, so well, then this theory, it's very, very, very questionable, problematic, right? It has a lot of issues, a lot of gaps. So, okay. I have a question for you though. Um, how often have you spent a whole day on your phone? A whole day. I've asked people that they have spent a whole day on their phones, and I've asked them, "How do you feel afterwards?" You know what they all say? I feel terrible. And I tell them, you know why you feel bad? Because you're connected to an experience machine. You connected to an experience machine for one day. You lost one day of your life. For one day, you were dead, right? That's one of the questions, right, of the reading assignment, the writing assignment. Nozick compares this choice, connecting to the experience machine for life, to suicide. You're killing yourself. You're putting an end to your life for the sake of some virtual reality. Like, really? So, and yet that's what many of you watching, that's what many of you do when you spend hours and hours on your phone. You're not actually having any experiences, real experiences, right? So something to think about. I would compare the experience machine to a cell phone. Keep that in mind for your quiz. All right, next problem. 5. While its democratic view of morality might be appealing to many, if not most people, utilitarianism is immediately perceived as wrong when we are the victims. What does that mean? For example, in the trolley dilemma, it is easy to be the moral judge when we are the ones in control of the lever. But what if we were the one person on the tracks, the one to be sacrificed? What if that person were you? Would you be okay if your life was taken without your consent to save a greater number of people? Will you be okay? You will not be okay. You'll say, no, without my consent? No, no, no. Will you be okay if we just kill you and take your organs? But we're going to do something great. We're going to save 5, 6, 10 people. No, you won't be okay with that. Will you be okay with your friends keeping it to themselves, that, the fact that you're being cheated on? Okay. Will that be okay with you? No, it won't be okay. So when we put ourselves in that position, in the position of the victim, okay, then everything changes. Like, we immediately see utilitarianism as monstrous, as totally immoral, absolutely wrong, criminal theory, actually. So yeah, we can see it very, very clearly. So, okay. And final problem in utilitarianism is uh, that, according to some critics, utilitarianism is too demanding. Too demanding. Um, okay, this is an example, right? A true utilitarian must always consider the moral outcome of her actions, and thus she should always favor the one capable of producing the greatest amount of joy to the greatest number of people. That means if a utilitarian knows that eating in a restaurant is more costly, more expensive than cooking, she must choose cooking and donate her extra money to people in need, either in her community or in some other place, knowing this action will actually bring more benefit to a greater number. Not doing so will actually be selfish and therefore immoral. So, okay, according to utilitarianism, pretty much we have to live like saints. Like, you can't take a break. You can't have a day off, because think about it. You're gonna have a day off with so many people out there you can help in some way, some capacity. There's so much need out there. You're gonna take a break. You can't. You need to maximize happiness, minimize pain. Wow. So I have some extra money in the bank because I'm saving for a vacation. You're saving for a vacation? No way. No. If you're committed to utilitarianism, you got to take the money, give it to people who need it, people who are struggling, right? Need to pay rent or some medical bills or something like that. So just give it up. Wow. Okay. So now, friends, in closing, I said this earlier. My students, or some of my students, have said, Mr. Molina, you paint a very negative picture of utilitarianism. And you know what? I had this realization recently. I said, okay, um, I'm that kind of person who tends to see the negatives first. Like, they are so evident to me that I cannot ignore them and go beyond the obvious problem issues and try to see a positive side about something, right? So I'm that kind of person. But there's more. And here's the realization. Friends, most people, we tend to be very, very shallow, very superficial in our analysis of things. Okay? And by that, what do I mean? I mean, this theory from the start, sort of makes sense. You're like, okay, if you're making most people happy, that's the right thing to do. If you're making most people unhappy, that's the wrong thing to do. And many people go immediately, oh, that's great. That makes perfect sense. But that is a very low resolution way of looking at things, especially morality. And to me, this is what utilitarianism is. It's shallow, superficial, low resolution. When you really do an in-depth analysis, you'll see all the things that I'm sharing here with you. Okay, all these problems about truth, about victimization, and so on. So it is difficult for me uh, to be fair in a way of, okay, here's the good things and here are the bad things about this theory. That's hard for me because I see that this theory is so fundamentally wrong, that I cannot go past that. Benefits or um, positives about utilitarianism, uh, rule utilitarianism maybe will be the positive thing about it, and I like it. But again, that it's just conventional morality, and that's it. There's not a whole lot of philosophical, intellectual value about conventional morality. Yeah, hold the door for people. Yes, um, bring donuts to your coworkers. Okay, we do those things, and okay, nothing wrong with those things. Okay, don't get me wrong, but there's very little philosophical, intellectual value in that approach to morality. So that's what I think about utilitarianism. You're welcome to disagree. You're welcome to disagree. If you do, please let me know through the weekly forum. I'd like to know your thoughts. And that's it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, this content is going to be on your quiz. Okay, see you next time.